So the past 2 weeks, our brother Ivan, I say Ivan, our brother Ivan has been doing a great job teaching on the subject of grace. Amen. In the first week, he introduced us to the subject. He introduced us to what it means, tracing it from the Old Testament through the New. And last week, I think we looked at some of the things that we can do to position ourselves for grace, or to position ourselves so that we can receive grace, or we can be recipients or beneficiaries of grace. And we also looked at some of the things that we can do to repel it, repel grace from knocking at our doors. So today, I want to take it a step further. I want us to look at a very common parable in the scriptures in the New Testament, a parable that most of us are familiar with, the parable of the wheat and tares. I want us to look at this parable and how it relates to the subject of grace. Amen. Most of the time, we look at other aspects of it. But today, I want us to focus on the grace element in it and how we can learn from it so that we can all move our grace level and not higher. Amen. I know that we are all gracious because we are all beneficiaries of grace. So because of that, we are gracious. But how we can move it a notch higher, especially when it comes to relating to others in the vineyard, others in the church, others even in the world, others around us, in our workplaces, in our homes, in our various situations where we find ourselves. Amen. So if we could turn to Matthew 13, Matthew chapter 13, reading from verse 24 to 30. Then, fortunately, this parable is explained for us. So we will look from 34 to 30, 24 to 30, then we will jump to 36 to 43. But if we could first look at the parable as it is told by Jesus, that would be great. Amen. Amen. And before Matthew 13, reading from verse 24. And before we start reading, I think it's very important to point out that this parable is told or comes immediately after the parable of the sower. And so there are some similarities in the sense that they all have to do with seeds which are sown. And so Jesus was trying to move his teaching to another level when he followed the parable of the sower up with this parable, the parable of the wheat and tares. Yes. Okay, so.
Amen. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way.
Amen. Let's proceed. Let's read up to 30.
But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, An enemy has done this. The servants said to him, Do you want us then to go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at that time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, First, gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn.
Amen. Amen. Now let's jump to 36. 36 to 43, where it is explained.
Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house. And his disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said to them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear.
Amen. Amen. So as I said, in this parable, we are fortunate to even have the explanation, because the disciples of Jesus saw the explanation. They didn't understand, so they went to him. After the multitude had left them, they went to Jesus when he went into the house, and they asked, could you explain to us what this parable means? And Jesus explained it to them, that the owner of the vineyard is the Son of God. The vineyard is the world. The good seeds are the children of God. The bad seed, or the enemy, is the devil. The bad seeds he sowed while men were asleep. And take note, he sowed them when men were asleep. So on our blind side, as Christians, we have to be careful, because on our blind side, or when we are not aware of what is going on, a lot can happen. That's why the Bible tells us to watch and pray, because the devil will always take advantage of situations. When you give him a mile, he will take about 20 miles, or not even, maybe 100. So this parable is very important. And as I said from the onset, I want us to just focus on the grace aspect of it. The scholars believe that the weed or the tares that were sown is a weed called darnel, which looks just like wheat. It's poisonous weed, but it looks just like wheat. And so when the crops are growing, there is no way to tell the difference between the real wheat and the poisonous weed which is growing amongst them. The only time you can tell the difference is harvest time, when the weed bears different fruits or years. The years will be different. The years of the fruit will be different from that of the wheat. That is the only time that you can tell that there is a difference. But when they are all growing up, you wouldn't be able to tell. Okay. Another thing that I want us also to know is that the devil, just like the gospel of God, is able to influence and to transform people. Just as the gospel can influence and transform us, if we are not careful, as I said, on our blind side, the devil can also influence and transform us. In other words, the devil can use us as his agents unwittingly without us even knowing it. And so we could be the tares among the wheat because we have allowed ourselves to be influenced, to be transformed, have therefore become agents of the enemy without knowing. Okay. One thing that I also want us to know is that in this parable, God is teaching us, or Jesus is teaching us a lesson. And the lesson is that there is divine prohibition against making a separation or making judgment. It's a divine order against making a prohibition or making a judgment or making a separation. Including angels, they are prohibited to make separation, to make judgment until the final day, until the judgment day. You know, I came across something one time when I was reading, and I don't remember the name of the author, it's been a while. But he was saying that men are very quick to judge. Even God, in his infinite wisdom, has chosen to judge man only at the end of his days. And there is a reason for that. And this is what this parable is teaching us. God has chosen to judge man only at the end of his days because we are not equipped to make the separation. Does it make sense up to this stage? We are not equipped to make the separation. We are not equipped to discern because we cannot see into the hearts of people. The people that we think are evil, God knows his own people. You know, as we will find in 2 Timothy, we will read that later, 2 Timothy 2:19, that God knows the people who are his. But we don't know the people who belong to God, who are his, and who will make the final cut. But most of the time, we are in a hurry to make a call, and we are in a hurry to make judgment because we think some people exhibit certain qualities or characteristics. Just as the servants of the master were quick in making a call, because to them, they were equipped enough to know what is wheat and what is tare, what is weed and what is real crop. But the master of the vineyard, who knows that no, you are not equipped, and even that job is not your job. That job belongs to the reapers. And in the explanation, we find out that the reapers are who? Angels. That job belongs to angels. And even with the angels, they cannot make the call now. They have to wait till the end of time when they have been given the needed instruction to make that separation. Amen. Amen. Are we good up to this point? Okay. So the devil, as I said, the devil can implant evil and diabolical principles into us. And we can become agents without even knowing. But man or we, the people in the church, or the people in the world, we are not equipped to make the call because God knows his own. And it is only at the end of time that it will be clear who belongs to God and who doesn't belong to him. Amen. Amen. Okay. And also in the explanation, we are told that the good seeds are the children of God, and the bad seeds are the children of the enemy. in reality, the enemy doesn't have any children. We are all children of God. We've all been created by God. However, if, as I said earlier on, if you allow yourself to become an agent, and as I said, there are some people who don't even know that they have become agents of the enemy. If you allow yourself to be implanted with those principles, diabolical and evil principles, you invariably become a child of God, or a child of the devil, because you exhibit the characteristics of your master. I hope you understand me. Yeah. But in reality, the devil doesn't have any children because he hasn't created any human being. I hope it makes sense up to this point. Yes. And so what the devil can do is to influence our mood and our attitudes by working on our mind. By working on our mind. And because he didn't create us, so he cannot control us, but he can influence us by working on our mind. That's what the Bible tells us, that we have to renew our minds. And so if we are not careful, the devil will work on our minds and will affect our moods and attitudes. And we will start working for him without even knowing. Amen. Amen. So what we learn here is that God is gracious. And as we will see in another parable shortly, the parable of the prodigal son, we see that God is gracious because in the parable of the prodigal son, as of the time that the prodigal son took his part of the inheritance and left and was having fun and was spending his money lavishly, I believe if we were all called to judge him, we would say that he is part of the test, right? Is that correct? Or we would have said something different? Yeah, we would have said that, oh, yeah, he's a weed. No pun intended, anyway. But he's a tare, right? But as of the time that he repented and came back and asked for forgiveness, and his father forgave him and had a party for him and called all his friends to come and enjoy with them, because this son was dead, but now he is alive. This son was lost, but now he is found. At that point, would you call him a tare? He has repented. He has become a weed. Yes. So this shows that God is gracious. God is gracious. So the people that we think are tares among us, and we are very quick to uproot. And even because we don't know the heart of people, at times in our bid to uprooting the tares, we will be uprooting the wheat as well. And that's what the master told the servants, that no. Don't uproot them now, because they look similar. They look almost the same. If you try to uproot what you think are the tares, you might end up uprooting the wheat as well. And so that's what we do to people. In our attempt at times to discipline people or to show that we are very sanctimonious and, we want to instill the fear of God into them, at times we harm and destroy souls who would otherwise have made a cut, because we don't know what is in their heart and we don't know what they would have become, just as the prodigal son repented, came into his senses, and went back to his father. Amen. Amen. Let's look at the story of the prodigal son quickly. In Luke 15, we will come back to conclude on this. But Luke 15, reading from verse 11. Luke 15, reading from verse 11.
Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of the goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, but no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. And when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fattened calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fattened calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, lo, these many years I have been serving you. I have never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, you have devoured your livelihood with harlots. You killed the fattened cow for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found.
Amen. 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 Yeah, your brother was dead, but is alive again. He was lost, but now he is found. You know, one important thing is that God does not want even one of us to fail. That is his plan. And as Christians, we have to know that that is his plan. He doesn't want even one of us to fail. In the parable of the hard workers, and I think we all know of that story where, you know, an owner of a vineyard went out and hired workers at different times to work in his vineyard. And he went 9 in the morning, 6 in the morning, hired workers, and he told them how much he will pay them. He went back 9, 12, 3, and even at the 11th hour, 5 p.m., he went out again. And apparently he has negotiated to pay them the same amount. So at the end of the day, what happened? Those who started working earlier were upset. You know, and I think some of us probably on the judgment day will be upset. That this guy, he was wicked on his deathbed. How come I see him here with me? You know, and, like the thief on the cross, there are some people who will steal their way into heaven. Amen. But that is the plan of God. God is gracious. God doesn't want even one of us to be lost. God doesn't want any of us to fail. And so, at any point in time, but you have to make sure that you receive it. You receive the grace here, because we can't pray you in whilst you transition, right? I hope we know that. Once you transition, there's no way we can pray you in, or we can ask God to have. I think most of those things we just say it just for the sake of saying it, pray that God will have pity on his soul. But, if the person didn't make amends before he or she transitioned, there isn't much that can happen. So that is the plan of God for us, that no one should fail, no one should be lost. And so God doesn't want any one of us to be destroyed. Good crops could be prevented from coming to maturity and bearing fruit. I think I said that earlier on. If we fail to be gracious, and we rush in judging and rushing in doing things, in uprooting early, in our bid to doing the work of God. And at times we think we are doing the work of God, right? Just like the servants of the parable of the wheat and tares, they thought they were doing a good job, a good work, by going to uproot the tares. And at times as Christians, that's what happens to us, that we think we are doing a good job. We think that's what the Lord wants me to do. I think God will be happy with this decision, or God will be happy with this action that I took. But at times, we will be destroying the good crops and preventing them from coming into maturation or maturity and bearing fruit. Because there are some people, just as in school, there are some people who are late bloomers, right? I think in life too, there are. Brother Max is raising his hand. Yeah, I think in life too, in this Christian walk too, there may be people who may be late bloomers, and they might get it late, or they might make wrong decisions till later when they decide to, turn the corner and give their lives to God. So we have to be gracious, just as we have received so much grace. Amen. Yes. As we grow in his law and word, that let's all have the opportunity to be his fruitful servants. Amen. Yes, let's all have the opportunity. Let's have the opportunity. Let's give others opportunity to become fruitful servants. Just as we saw in the parable of the prodigal son, that he had the opportunity to be a fruitful servant. Left to his brother alone, he would have been uprooted. But because the father in this parable is the symbol of God, is a representative of God, and he is gracious, he gave him opportunity to become a fruitful servant. And I think that's what God expects all of us to do, that we will give others the opportunity to become fruitful in his vineyard, because most of the time we can't even discern what is in the hearts of men, and we cannot see whether somebody is going to change later on or not. And at times, what we even consider to be evil or evil characteristics, maybe in the eyes of God, is a time for them to maybe learn and come out of a situation. We don't know. So I just wanted us to share these two parables and to learn about the graciousness of God, and that God also expects us to be gracious. from us the punishment that we deserve. And if God is merciful and gracious, then we who are followers of God, followers of Christ, we have to be the same way and not rush in judging people, not rush in condemning people. We also have to extend grace to others and give people the opportunity to change and be fruitful. In Jesus' mighty name, amen, amen, amen. Any questions? Any questions or contributions as it relates to these two parables or anything I've said so far? Yeah, Brother Ivo.
I really like the parable of the prodigal son, or as I've heard some people say, the parable of the father's heart. And